As I began to work on my sermon this week, I quickly came to the realization there was a lot to be said about the subject that I'd picked out. Look at some of these quotes that I found on the internet about integrity. It says, "Wisdom is knowing the right path to take. Integrity is taking it." I thought that was really good. This next one said, "Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching." And C.S. Lewis, the great Christian writer, said that. Here's another one. "Integrity gives you real freedom because you have nothing to fear since you have nothing to hide." And Zig Ziglar is the one who is attributed with that. Then finally, this one. Integrity, the choice between what's convenient and what's right. Football coach and Hall of Famer Tony Dungy is the one who said that. You know, integrity is what I want to talk about today. And like I say, it was no shortage of things to be said about integrity as I began to look at this topic. Integrity is such a critical issue today. We're truly living in a time when you wonder if you can trust anyone, honestly. You feel like, can I trust anyone? Integrity is a big deal for business owners because they've got to worry about their employees that they have. It's a big deal for churches because of the leaders we choose. It's a big deal nationally when we choose leaders to run our country. Have any of you been watching the news lately? I mean, it's just unbelievable the things that we're finding out. And for a generation of young people who need someone to step up and be a role model of integrity, I would say a national epidemic of people to stand up with integrity. The word integrity means complete or whole. And this diagram, I think, in 3 words defines integrity. It's where our words, our beliefs, and our actions all converge. And if those things line up and converge, you have integrity. I was talking to a friend not very long ago, and he said where he worked, there was a guy working there, but he also was a preacher. And said something happened at work, and the preacher turned on him, and he said, "Greg, he cussed me out." And he says, and I'm not saying that he just fussed at me. He said, I'm saying he cussed me out. And that just doesn't add up in my mind, in the world where I come from. That just doesn't add up. That's a good illustration of what integrity is. Do your beliefs add up with your actions? Average is our current series, where we're talking about is average good enough? And I've said it every week, and I want to keep saying it for this week, and then when we conclude our series next week on average, is that just being average doesn't cut it. It's just not going to get it done. It's not going to make you the great father you need to be. It's not going to make you the great mother you need to be. Husband, wife, all of these things. It's just not going to cut it. And I've said that every week. But here's something else that came to my mind this week. We do not want to be average. We don't want to be treated average. We do not want our lives to be average, except when it comes to what is expected of us. We don't want people to expect more of us. When it comes to integrity, things that we're going to go above and beyond, we're okay just being average because it's too hard to be the other. But you see, integrity and more than average cannot coexist. Or integrity and average cannot coexist. It's a daily decision what we do. There are several reasons it is so easy to compromise our integrity. It's so hard to be a person of integrity. It's easy to excuse it because we hear and say things, everybody else is doing it. And you know what? It may not be 100% true, but it's getting close. It's close to a little truth that everybody else is doing it. Another reason integrity is hard to have is that we have the temptation to compromise over and over and over every single day. We don't have integrity one time, then we never have to worry about it again. We have the opportunity to compromise our integrity over and over and over, 365 days a year. This is an old, old story. I think I remember Dolan using it in a sermon many years ago, but it's supposed to be a true story that a man stopped at a drive-thru at a restaurant and ordered food, and they handed the food out, in the to-go boxes, and he pulled out and got down the street, and when they opened up the food, it was a box full of money. And he, quickly realized this. I bet you that their deposit they hid in a food box, one of the takeout boxes, and when the employees took and handed, he turned the car around, went back, parked his car, left his wife out in the car, walked inside and said, "Hey, I don't think you meant to give me this." The manager was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened." He was just overjoyed. He says, Please come in and sit down. Get your wife and come back inside. We want to pay for your meal, and I would just like to get a picture with you so we can tell the regional manager what happened and everything." And the man was kind of hesitant to do that, and he finally said, he says, "Well, I am married, but the woman with me is not my wife." And he couldn't come in, he couldn't bring her inside. You see, that's how integrity is a hard thing. We can show integrity in one thing and then very easily compromise it in another area. That's one of the reasons it's so difficult. Integrity is not reputation. You can have a good reputation, but a compromised integrity. Do you remember the huge, massive tree that stood right over here beside the church office? That thing was huge. And I know that some of us, hot summer days would come to church, you'd park your car under there and everything so you can come out after church and your car would be a little cooler from being in shade. Then one of the storms came through and it blew the entire tree down, not just a limb, the whole tree fell. And then we realized that the tree was diseased and hollow inside. The reputation of the tree was tremendous, but the integrity of the tree had been compromised. Reputation is what people think of you. Integrity is really who you are. Now I want to look at, in Daniel chapter 6, that's where we're going to spend all of our time. If you want to turn there, Bible's on the back of the pew in front of you. It'll be on the screen. But Daniel chapter 6 contains an illustration of a person of integrity. Daniel's life and decisions do more to define and illustrate integrity than what I could describe and define in 30 minutes, or as much time as I needed. So we're going to go there and look at his life, a familiar story, but in Daniel chapter 6, we're going to start with verse 1. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. We see what's taking place here. The king of this vast kingdom, he has people running the show for him, so it's not too much of a load on him. Then he has 3 that's over those 120, says, and one of those is Daniel. Darius is the king of the Medo-Persian Empire. Daniel wasn't appointed by Darius, but rather by the king before him, but he kept him on. And that gives you a little bit even more insight. If he was good enough, a trustworthy man, that a new king keeps him, that says a lot. How can you get to be a man of integrity? Well, it doesn't happen overnight. Daniel's life, if you go back and read the book of Daniel, Daniel's life was marked by event after event of major and minor decisions to be a man of integrity, an uncompromising spirit. Eric Liddell. Now, this old school picture here is an old school story. Probably for people my age, you remember the movie Chariots of Fire that came out many, many years ago, but it may be new to you, some of our younger ones here. Eric Liddell was set to run in the 1924 Olympics. He was going to run in the 200-meter dash. But when he arrived at the Olympics and the schedule came out, he found out that the qualifying races were scheduled on Sunday. And that posed a problem for this very devout young man. He had, in his mind, he did not believe that he could honor God by competing on Sunday. So he said, I will not compete in games on Sunday. And his friends, coaches, other competitors tried to convince him that this is no big deal. Just run your heat race, then you'll be able to run into the Olympics. And they even said you can honor God then. But he said, no, I cannot violate what I believe. Well, a coach came to him a little later and said, hey, I know you've missed the 200 meter, but would you like to run in the 400 meter race? And he ran the qualifying race for that and made it into the Olympic final rounds for that. He had never trained for the 400 meter, but he went out and won the gold medal. This is, as you say, this is a Hollywood story, but it's true. Eric Liddell would not compromise his spirit. You see, if a man lacks ability, you can teach him skills and train him in job skills. But if a man or woman lacks integrity, no amount of training will make them a trustworthy person. That's why I love the advice. Decide what kind of person you're going to be before you try to decide what you're going to do in life. Decide who you're going to be before you decide what you're going to do. Daniel chapter 6, verse 3 goes on and says this. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Now remember that he planned to set him over the whole kingdom, but first I want to talk about that exceptional qualities. Now, some translations translate that as he had an excellent spirit. And no matter how you translate it, it means that Daniel stood out, that he stood above all the others. That he was that guy that you'd go, there's just something different about him. He's the guy I'd leave a key to my house to. He's just something different about him. How do you distinguish yourself? How do you stand out like that? Well, when you decide that you're going to be the one in the group who doesn't lie, doesn't steal, doesn't cheat, doesn't gossip, doesn't talk behind people's back, doesn't throw them under the bus, trust me, you will stand out. You will distinguish yourself. A person of integrity looks at life through different lenses, different glasses, you might say. He has a different perspective on work and life altogether. Paul said this in Colossians 3, 23 and 24. He says, whatever you do, whatever it is, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for men. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. That's a whole different look at how you work and how you act and how you go to school and how you treat your fellow people, employees or co-workers. Your public record, your integrity, your reputation may be spotless, but that doesn't mean you will not have your enemies. Go back to Daniel 6. Look at verses 4 and 5. At this, and what he talks about at this is that when they found out that the king was going to put him over the whole kingdom. So at this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Verse 5, finally these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God. Wow. Does that sound a little bit like today? In the workplace, in politics, that they'll use our faith against us. Well, we can't put you in this position because you'll be guided by your faith. You'll try to push Christian morals on everyone. We can't have you in this position. You can't have that sign up. You can't have that on your desk. And they'll use our faith against us, against Christians who are exhibiting integrity. Well, these jealous men, they hatch a plan. And they go to the king and convince him by flattery. You need to read this on your own, but they flatter him so much that he says, you know, you're such a great king that we need to pass a 30-day national law, rule, that no one can pray to anybody but you, great King Darius. And that sounded pretty good. And so King Darius signs it into law, and it was a thing of the laws of the Persians that if it was signed into law, it could not be undone. Even the king couldn't undo the law. So what would Daniel do when he finds himself in this trap? Go to verses 10 and 11. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Do not let that escape you. Just as he had done before. Verse 11. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. This was a setup. There was nothing genuine, there was nothing sincere, there was nothing honorable about this. But it was a setup. And I feel like Daniel knew it as well, that he knew he was being set up. But still, with everything to lose, he didn't compromise. How easy would it have been just to say, I know what they're up to. I know what they're doing, and you're not going to trick me. You're not going to catch me praying. What would have been say, we'll leave the windows shut. Now, and I'm not saying you have to have your windows open when you pray, but if that's what he's been doing, then why change it now? Or to say just for 30 days, just for 30 days, I'll be a secret prayer. Daniel would have nothing to do with that. He would not compromise in doing this. Well, these men run to the king and tell him about Daniel. And the king, I believe, at that point knew he had been tricked. He knew it later for sure, but I think he even knew it then. But there was nothing he could do, so Daniel was sentenced to die. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, and it was sealed up. And it even says that the king regretted this and tried to find a way to save Daniel. Well, he's thrown into the lion's den. The mouth of the den is sealed up, so he cannot escape. And in Daniel 6, verses 19 through 22, it says this. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. It even says he couldn't sleep all night because he's worried about Daniel. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? Verse 21, Daniel answered, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. And I love this where he says, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. So he says, my integrity is intact. God knows I'm innocent, and you, O king, I haven't done anything wrong to you. I certainly pray that this man's life inspires you to want to be a person of integrity, just like it challenges and inspires me. And if it does, there's several things that you need to come to grips with very quickly if you want to become a person or remain a person of integrity. One is you can't wait for your environment to improve to change. You can't wait for everything around you to be different before you change who you are, because your job may never change. Your work environment may never change. Your husband, your wife may never change. Your living conditions may never change. Remember, integrity is about what goes on inside here, where it grows out of. It is not determined by the environment, the circumstances that you're in, what's happening outside. So you can't wait for things to improve out here before you say, I'll change inside. And 2, you've got to set your standards in advance. You must determine ahead of time that you're going to be a person. You can't decide, and you can't go into every decision every day and say, well, if the temptation is too great, or if the boss asks me this, I'll just have to lie. You have to go into that day saying, no matter what someone asks me, I'm going to tell the truth. Period. No matter if it hurts me, how much it's going to cost me on the job, whatever. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to cheat. Those things have to be decided ahead of time. You can't wait to the moment of the temptation, the moment of the compromise to make up your mind. The third thing is this. We have to develop spiritually a plan, a depth that will carry us through the day. Now we know that we can start off a day pretty good. But as the things come at us and pile on us, it can change very quickly. But we need to develop in a way that carries us through the day with that same intent and that same goal that we started the day with. You know, Fitbit, everybody know what a Fitbit is. You just got to say that word. Apple Watch, we know what that is. And one of the things about a Fitbit or an Apple Watch is you can set it to remind you, if you have a job where you sit a lot, a little vibrational alarm will go. It says, time to get up and walk, time to get up and move around a little bit. And it'll help you. It reminds you to get up and move around, not just sit all the time. We need some reminders set in our lives, some things that will spur us on throughout the day to do, to be the person we need to be. I think one of the most consistent prayer times in my life was when I was right out of high school and I was working for a heating and air conditioning company, and they would send me on they give you in the morning, great for an 18-year-old, give you 6 work orders in a work van, and I was gone for the day. It's a good thing I was such a good guy. But I'd leave, and I was wanting to be a person that prayed better, so I made up my mind. I said, every time I arrive at someone's house, approximately 6 times a day I would arrive at somebody's house, I'm going to pray before I get out of the truck. And I just did that. It might be a minute or two prayer or whatever, but I'd pray at every home I went to. You know what? It was the best prayer life I've ever had because I had those markers in my life. It didn't become a thing of ritual, but it was a reminder. And you and I need those. Whether it be a Fitbit or something set, instead of get up and walk, it's time to pray. Or before you eat breakfast or drink that cup of coffee, whether there's got to be time to read God's Word. We have to develop those things. Integrity does make a difference. Look at what happened because of Daniel's life of integrity. Daniel chapter 6, verse 26 says this. I issue, and this is Darius speaking, he says, I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. Verse 27, he rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. Let me tell you something. Your life of integrity will make a difference. It may just be right in your family. It may be in your workplace. It may be in the church. It may be the whole community, or it may be a story that's told around the world, but one thing is for sure, it will be told in heaven. Your life of integrity. Being a man or a woman of integrity may not keep you out of the lion's den, but it'll sure keep you from going there alone. Because God will be right there wherever it takes you. Reputation versus integrity. What people think of you or what you really are. Now maybe you feel like you've already failed in that integrity area. You may feel like because of integrity and failure in your life, your reputation is shot on top of that as well. Greg, I hear what you're saying, and I wish I could be that way, but I've already ruined it. My wife doesn't trust me. My children don't trust me. I've failed so many times. I don't have integrity. Before you cut yourself too short on this, Remember, God has worked with some integrity problems before. A man named Moses, we just talked about him. He had an integrity problem. He had a reputation problem. He had been a murderer. He'd been run out of town. He'd been a fugitive. 40 years ago by, and nobody wanted anything to do with him. But God turned him into a person that when he went back to Egypt, it said not only did the people of his own people, the Israelites, admire him and think he was a great man. In the end, the people of Egypt thought he was a great man. How about David? Talk about a man with an integrity problem, reputation problem, adultery, murder, lying, national scandal. Can you come back from that? Apparently so. Because in the end, God described David as a man after his own heart. And he was beloved by his nation. Simon Peter, talk about integrity problems. He not only did something wrong, he denied he even knew Jesus. What kind of friend would Simon Peter be to you? He denied and called down curses from heaven and said, I do not know the man. Can you come back from that? Jesus showed him mercy and grace and forgiveness. He became one of the greats of the New Testament church. His words are written in your Bibles right now, the things he had to say. God offers us the same kind of mercy, same kind of grace, same kind of forgiveness, and a chance to start over that he offered these men, these women throughout the Bible. Today, we need you to be more than average. We need people of integrity. You need to be a person of integrity, just like I need to be. If you've got a decision to make, I pray you'll make it as we stand and sing together.